Okay, so I've been shooting a lot of Panchromatic film lately, so we're gonna go ahead and talk about another Panchromatic film that recently came out. I shot some Easy 400 recently. I've shot some Palm Panchromatic 100 and 400 recently out of a lab in Miami. Easy 400, I think he is based out of the UK, somewhere over there. So today we're talking about Agent Shadow 400, which is a Panchromatic film of ISO 400. And apparently it can be pushed up to ISO 3200. Now this was recently on Kickstarter by Cosmo Photo, which also has Cosmo 400, another black and white film, and this is their new recently released Kickstarter campaign backed Agent Shadow 400. Now, according to, of course, their own website, this is not a new stock. This is a old stock that's been brought back to life and reformatted for 35mm, apparently with a lot of flexibility. It is a Panchromatic film, according to the website. Now, I did shoot recently Palm Panchromatic 100 and 400. I didn't test whether those could be pushed up to 3200, but I also didn't see anywhere where they should be or could be pushed up to 3200. There's also EZ 400, which is another, I think it's basically just a rebranded Fomopan from what others have told me and what I can gather based off shooting these different black and white films lately. And again, I think that can be pushed 1 to 2 stops, but I don't see it anywhere being pushed to 3200. So I don't think this is the same exact stock, but I also do see some similarities with things like blooming in the highlights, you know, and lighter, softer grains as well. I don't think I actually did a video on shooting EZ400. I think it was because either I had light leaks or I just wasn't happy with the results and didn't feel like putting something together for that. But I'll be sure to include some of those images in this as well. It's kind of a comparison. And also the Palm Panchromatic 100 and 400s too. So you can kind of see some similarities and comparisons. What I really wanted to do with this Agent Shadow 400 is put it in a few different scenarios. I wanted to do some high contrast, make sure I get some backlit and things like that, to see if I got some of those similar blooms and highlights and see how it reacted to that high contrast scenario. So this was all shot on the Nikon F3. I overexposed it about a stop, just because I wanted to see how that worked out as well. For most of these, some of these I didn't. But again, I'm just trying to see how this film reacts to different scenarios. I kind of played around, is basically what I'm saying here. So I took it with me to the Keys. So if there's anywhere that's gonna be high contrast, it's the Keys, where everything's blazing hot. I took some portraits of my wife and my little girl out back, again, the middle of the day, so it's gonna be high contrast, a lot of sun, very bright, just to see how it worked in there. It's got great contrast. It's not super punchy and overpowering. I know a high contrast film that I really liked is JCH 400, and that's got a really big punch to it. This doesn't, of course, have that much punch, especially with these portraits. I think I shot these just at box speed. I didn't overexpose them at all. But you can see it's got a nice soft grain, nice, good contrast to it, but not too much. Shadows are still there, the highlights are still there, there's still plenty of detail, plenty of texture. Also, some of these were shot indoors and in low light, so they're kind of underexposed. A few of these of my daughter during the day, and then a couple of me with her as well. And they held up decently well for being underexposed. That's something you could definitely work with indoors, but even being underexposed by a stock, I still like those results. I still like that image, how it's shot. So these two are the best examples of having a lot of that backlight come in and the high contrast between shadows and highlights. Where I live, there's a walkway out and you can see kind of the intercoastal area. And so the sun sets back there. And so I wanted to shoot further back so I'd get those shadows of the trees that kind of cover that little walkway, but then also you get the water with that bright reflection and the sky as the sun's, you know, dropping down and setting. So it's a very high contrast scenario. And I wanted to see how much detail I got in that situation. And as you can see, of course I did DSLR scan these, and I tried not to play with it too much. So lab results might look a little bit different just because I have more flexibility with this, but I tried to keep it pretty much straight out of camera, but you can still see I have a lot of detail in those shadows, and I can still see the water, I can still see the reflections, I can still see the coastline, the sky, and I get that bloom that I was talking about with these highlights, which is a really cool effect. And again, if you're going to overexpose and things like that, you're gonna lend yourself to getting more of that bloom than shooting at act box speed. This one here as well, you can see a lot of that bloom, but I still have detail in those shadows. It's a little bit grainy, which I think I probably pulled this one up a little bit more to see how much I had there. Now, if you go to some of these that I shot in downtown walking around, this is at like lunchtime. So again, broad daylight, sun's right overhead. Again, I overexposed these probably 1 stop just to kind of make sure I had something in the shadows and didn't lose anything, and just see how it reacted. still see here, I could have exposed this at box speed and still been fine and got more of those shadows in. And of course, if I want to, having DSLR scan this, I can go back in and make those adjustments and kind of bring those shadows back down to where it probably should be. But you know, the contrast is there, the texture is there, the image quality, it's all there. And then having that sun directly above, you don't have as much of that bloom depending on what you're shooting. Again, this one here with the 110, that's another one blooming. No, this is not my address, so don't go looking it up. This one indoors, this was early in the morning before I was getting to go to work. The sun was just popping in really nice, and it looked really cool with that shadow there. Again, it held up fine. Not a lot of bloom in this shot, probably because it's underexposed for what the scene is, but just really wanted to highlight those shadows and that high contrast there. As far as with portraits, it's great with portraits. The shots that I got, the close-ups, I really liked how it looked. I really liked the texture, I really liked the skin tones, and they're softer, the good contrast. It's not too heavy, not too much. So I'm pretty sure I shot the vast majority of this roll with the 50mm 1.4. I think there's a few that I shot with a 24 or 28. This has just come out recently. It was released on Kickstarter. It was fully backed. So I got this. It's been too long now since I shot this, but this should be pretty much available where you can find most film online and stuff. So if you want to try out a new old stock Panchromatic film, definitely check out Agent Shadow 400. I'm gonna have to try and push this to the 3200 and see what that looks like and see how that comes out, because I haven't shot any Panchromatic recently that has that kind of flexibility and latitude. So I'll be very curious to try that out. I know I shot Santa 1000 recently and had some good results with that, but it's been a long time since I shot a 3200 speed film. I think I shot at Ilford a while back, and I kind of messed that roll up if I remember correctly. So I'll be very curious to shoot this at 3200. But if you're looking for a new Panchromatic film that gives you a lot of options as far as ISO, great results, great contrast, it has some nice bloom, some nice life and texture to it, definitely check out Agent Shadow 400. I'm a big fan of Cosmo Photo. I like their films. They're trying to bring back old stock and keep film kind of going and moving. So definitely check out Agent Shadow 400. If you have any questions about this film or any of the other Panchromatic films or anything else that I've shot recently, be sure to leave that in the comments below. And otherwise, I'll see you in the next video.